You recently did work with KFC, Courtney. And it was on billboards, it was on TV, it was everywhere. Tell us a little bit about that.
The work that I do is actually not about me. It's about the kind of agenda or plan that needs to come to fruition. And I'm just like, I use the word conduit for the creative conduit for the work to be done. So it was a very...
And one thing about Kefkak, if I'm not mistaken, is you've got 100% female team that you are empowering. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I always use the phrase, if you want to go far, go together. And I think that's so important. I had a bit of an identity crisis in which I was questioning what is heritage to a white English first generation South African.
Sure. Hello, Dumelang Sanvanani, and welcome to another episode of the Youth Excellence Podcast. That's Yep. And I'm your host, Elma Akob, and we're going to have another incredible episode with a guest who is a friend, who is a fave, who you are going to find out a little bit more about. I am joined today with the founder of Kefkak, and her name is Courtney Hodgson. Ladies and gents, let's give it up for Courtney.
Woo!
Welcome, Courtney, to the Youth Excellence Podcast, a podcast that emphasizes and recognizes youth excellence. And I believe you embody all that is youth excellence. So I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. Now, I could go on about who you are and tell these people what you've done and how your designs and your graphics are on KFC boxes, etc. There's a lot that we can get into. But before we do, let's start off with a little icebreaker just to get to know you a little bit better. So this is called Letter by Association. I'm going to tell you a letter and you're going to give me a word that you associate with that letter and what it means to you. And our letter for the day is N.
N. Not settling.
Oh, okay. Give us a compound word.
Giving 2 words, put a dash in between them.
And call it one word.
Not settling.
Tell me about that.
I just think that if you have a dream that's been placed in you and you really believe in that thing, that you need to be on the pursuit of not settling for anything except for that dream. So
that's right.
Not settling is my word.
And that kicks off our entire conversation, because one thing I know about you is you have never been one to settle. And so I want to hear from your words, your story, who you are, what you do. And I think, again, what you're wearing also speaks to your personality. Absolutely love the colors. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
So if I had to describe myself in a few words, it would definitely be quirky, creative, kind. These are things that are at the forefront for me. Community driven. A lot of, incidentally, Kefkak with 2 Ks, a lot of C and K words come up when I describe things, which I don't know if it's related, but some sort of golden thread. I've always been a creative person, whether it's art or design or music, things like that. And I knew that had to play a role in whatever I was doing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, another C word that I can give is community driven. So making sure that we're finding that happy medium between how can we use this creativity, but also build community and build up people in those communities at the same time.
Yeah. So I would say that you are an entrepreneur, but you're also into the advocacy space and you're also into the speaking space. So let's start off with the entrepreneur side of you. Kefkak. What? For those who don't know, and if you don't know, I'm going to invite you to go to the socials to find out what Kefkak is all about. But tell us about Kefkak. Where did this idea come from? Where did the name come from? And where has it taken you?
Wow, it feels... I do not have any children, but I can definitely say that Kefkak feels like my firstborn child. I think any entrepreneur that owns a business would know that it feels that way. Kefkak started as a university project where we were asked to brand our heritage using illustration. And as a white person that is first generation South African, I had a bit of an identity crisis in which I was questioning what is heritage to a white English first generation South African.
Sure.
The answer is not super clear, but that made me realize that the answer is not clear for a lot of South Africans. It doesn't matter if you're white or English. It's really that we're all trying to find our way in this in-between space. And yeah, the name was initially Courtney's Kif Little Kakkies. And let's be honest, we're not winning any awards for copywriting.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah. So I think the Lord himself descended on a cloud and said, baby girl, I have a vision for you with this thing. And if you don't just shorten that name, it's not going to go very far. So by some miraculous turn of events, it got shortened to Kefkak. I still have the notebooks where I did all this planning and I wrote these things down, which is so nice to go back and look at. I created a few products for that project. I kind of expanded on the brand in third year, and I sold my first bumper sticker during that project. And then I was like, maybe this is something that really is calling me. And I think as the parents of Kefkak, the custodian, it's been interesting to watch it evolve into so many different things as I grow as a human being as well. But in a nutshell, Kefkak is a brand that celebrates South African culture, South African heritage, and it is a liminal space in which all of us can find where we belong in between everything, which I think is so important in a space like South Africa. We need more spaces where we're kind of figuring out our identity together. Why do we have to be on islands while it's happening? So Kefkak provides that space for people.
So good. And I think in South Africa, we celebrate the diversity of the country a lot, but with diversity comes that lonely feeling of lost identity, that if I don't fit into this diversity, who am I? I'm thinking currently there's something trending on social media. There was a male pageant that happened, and the contestant from America wore a Captain America suit, like a full-on, like Spider-Man,
culture.
like a full-on Captain America, and held the shield. And Americans were dragging him. They're like, sir, you couldn't find one thing to represent American culture. You wore Captain America. And so I think that there are a lot of people who are sitting down questioning, when it's Heritage Month, what do I wear?
Yeah.
What do I celebrate? Who am I? And so thank you for Kefkak. Thank you for that. I think it is a place that a lot of South Africans can find themselves in relatable content and what we can all relate to. So tell us a little bit about the products that are offered at Kefkak, where people can find it, what they can get their hands on, so they can visualize what Kefkak is all about.
Yeah. So everything is rooted off of South African slang and South African cultural elements. So we've got things like a t-shirt that says slap chip, for example. And then I also try and bring in that South African flavor. So we're not trying to sell like a sun hat, for example. Is that really uniquely South African? If we're thinking about a hat, we're rather thinking about a bucket hat, for example.
Bucket is where it's at.
Trying to kind of make sure that the offering is also representing us as a country. Yes. So there's 3 different sections. There's the Kasi range, which is stuff for your home. So we've got fridge magnets, mugs, things like that. And then we've got the apparel range. So that is all products that are made in South Africa as well. So everything is either locally produced 100% or at least locally finished. That's really, really important. So the apparel range is beanies and hats and baby grows and aprons and anything that you can wear, we have. Yeah. And then we've got the Kefkak Cares range, which is where we collaborate with different NPOs, for example. So we've done pad donation drives. We've worked with Ladles of Love for a range of lunch boxes where we fed 4,667 kids with that project. So that was amazing. And then not to leave this out, but there's the Kefkak Collabs range where I try my best to work with other small businesses in South Africa where we can say, okay, I really want to make candles that are South African scents. So then I contacted Erin from Co-Theory, who is a really good friend, and we made the milk tart candle, the chappy candle, peppermint crisp tart. So it's really figuring out how we can all pull on that community to work together to uplift each other. So those are like the 4 distinct sections of the brand.
Love that. I'm sure the international market, especially those in the diaspora, are absolutely loving this, because imagine you've been there in the UK for so long and now you get a milk tart candle and it's just taking you back home and you're remembering all the good stuff. So phenomenal business idea. One thing I always say about being a young, excellent person is that in your excellence, you make sure to bring others along with you. And one thing about Kefkak, if I'm not mistaken, is you've got 100% female team that you are empowering. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I always use the phrase, if you want to go far, go together. And I think that's so important. So obviously, I think something about owning a small to medium business is that you need to be used to that ebb and flow. Sometimes you have a team of 5 or so people, and then sometimes it goes down a little bit when it's a quieter season, and that's really okay. Yeah. But no matter the size of the team, I'm only working with females. So it's super important to me that it's a female-led business where we also like have that community in the space that we're working in. I am probably not a traditional boss in the sense that I do want to be friends with the people that are working with me, because Kefkak, I think whatever's happening internally in your business will affect externally, even if it's not like super tangible. People pick up on that, especially when it's a brand where they're buying products. So really so important to be working with all women. I wouldn't even say that it was like a super conscious decision at first, but once it started happening, I was like, this is the trajectory that we need to go on. And if we're going to own a brand where people assume that it's a but behind the brand, let's surprise them and like show them that women can run something.
110%. And I think with that then, my follow-up question to that would be, what are some of the challenges that you face since starting Kefkak with people not knowing who's behind the brand and then finding out and then going, So
I think people are usually pleasantly surprised, which is
good.
But in terms of like carving out your space as a female entrepreneur, I have found that it does have its challenges. For example, there was an incident where I had a batch order of t-shirts and I'd gone to the supplier and they'd messed the order up. I don't think that they would have handled me the same way if I was a man complaining about the order. And then you have to kind of pull yourself towards yourself and try and stand up for yourself. And it feels like you need to work a little bit harder for people to respect you and your opinion. So that whole incident was really eye-opening for me. It got to the point where I was like, should we be wearing like a fake wedding ring or something? Because like, will you respect me more if you know?
Listen.
It's very interesting. But I mean, even being a young woman, like that's the thing. It's been very interesting getting older because I'm used to being the youngest person in the room that's doing the things. So that's quite humbling. But that also gives us the opportunity of, as we're getting older, we're remembering what it was like to be a young person trying to carve our way, and we're having more grace for the people around us.
So good.
So really, you can say that there's a lot of challenges being a young female entrepreneur, but at the end of the day, that doesn't make my business any less successful. And that's why I also separate the identities. So for a very long time, nobody knew who was behind Kefkak. And I liked it that way because you're viewing the brand from your cultural background and how you've experienced South Africa. And you're not looking at the person that owns the brand to answer those questions for you. You're kind of making up your own mind. And that's why often when I speak about Kefkak, I speak about we, as if Kefkak is this other person, because completely it has a different personality and it expresses itself differently to what Courtney does. And that's a really fun place to be in, where you can have this like split identity.
That's right.
Business.
And I think to what you're saying over there, being a leader in the work that you do and being a young leader, I think we need to step into that and embrace it more because we lead differently. A little bit earlier on, you spoke about how leading a team looks a little bit differently to you because you're not the traditional full suit, you will do as I say leader, but you want to be friends with your team. And I think as young people, we tend to shy away from that. As women, we tend to shy away from that. We put on these personalities that are not ours because we want to appear as better leaders, but you can be a nurturing leader. You can be a friendly leader. You can be a leader who people follow because you are relatable. Not all leadership looks white and male. Not all leadership looks the same. You can find your own identity in your leadership. And so hearing you saying it and hearing the fact that you've done it and you've done it successfully, I think encourages those who are listening to say that, yeah, I can be my own type of leader. In fact, today we're going to play 30 seconds at work because that's going to help us to be a little bit more creative when we come back to the office. You recently did work with KFC, Courtney, and it was on billboards. It was on TV. It was everywhere. Tell us a little bit about that. And I think we'll see if we can try and just include the bucket over here so that we can show people what we're talking about. But how does one get to work with a brand like KFC? Tell me about that.
So it's actually been so interesting. So obviously, being a creative entrepreneur, you have to be multifaceted. I've got my fingers in many buckets. Let's not even say pies. Many sprinkle pops. And it's been interesting because as an illustrator and designer, I do work with so many different brands, and I help their visions come to life apart from Kefkak. But the entire KFC job came because somebody bought a Kefkak t-shirt at some point in time, and they added my name to a list of illustrators who they might want to work with. So that's, again, that golden thread that you don't know what's connecting you to where you're going to be. It was a wild time, a wild honor, beautiful, beautiful project to be part of. I don't know. I felt very frozen while it was happening. And I had to really dig deep and ask myself, why am I not kind of like showering myself with this? You did it, girl. Like, I really wasn't ego driven while it was happening. And I was surprised by that. Mm-hmm. And eventually when I had, been my own therapist and gone through it in my brain, I realized that I just truly believe that God sends down the ideas. They land on the specific people who are capable of bringing them to fruition.
So good.
And then it is my responsibility to do that and release it into the world so that the people who are supposed to see the outcome will, and that they get from it what God intended for them to get from it. So most of the time, I feel that the work that I do is actually not about me. It's about the kind of agenda or plan that needs to come to fruition. And I'm just like, I use the word conduit for the creative conduit for the work to be done. So it was a very interesting, eye-opening project, but what a blessing and something that I'll never, ever forget.
Yeah.
I ate so much KFC. It was
every time a bucket just to see it. I also went and got one just because I wanted to say, when you go to the cashier and you're like, my friend designed this. I know her. Speaking of being a vessel, I think I'm really proud to see the number of young people who have stepped into the calling of being a vessel, because a lot of people who are on this podcast speak to the fact that, yes, they're entrepreneurs, yes, they're making money, but they've got this deeper sense of responsibility to be the voice of change or to change something in society. And I think that's how we change South Africa, is by all of these young people who are trying to be differences in their own communities. And that leads me to my next question about advocacy. Now, I know that you are someone who has a voice. In a country that is riddled with gender-based violence, you stand as a voice. And so I want you to tell us a little bit more about that and what projects you're involved with and how that came about.
So I recently started doing my honors because I dropped out the first time, which is okay, guys.
That's okay.
Have some grace for yourself. It's fine. God's timing is God's timing. Yeah. So part of that was, one of our projects was to kind of suggest something that would be in line with the social development goals, that is a design-centered solution to a South African problem. And I was quite vulnerable with the group that I was with because it happened to be an all-female group that I was put in. And I just said, recently, last year in April, I was assaulted by a man I met on a dating app. And my question is, why are there not preventative measures put in place to keep perpetrators off of dating apps? Yeah. So this started an entire journey that I've been on this year, which was very unexpected, where we developed a kind of code called Checkmate, which our proposal to, starting obviously with the South African government, but beyond that, is that when you sign up for create a profile on a dating app, you have to put in your ID number so that you're checked if you are on the criminal record list or if you have a sex offense against your name. And if you have those things, you're not allowed on the app. We need to keep perpetrators off of dating apps. So this started a whole journey. The project is called Checkmate. I created a short film. First time I've ever shot a film, directed a film. But I was like, if it's creative, I think that I can do it. So it's that little delulu that you have to have as a creative entrepreneur. We created the film. We went to different protests and filmed at these different protests for GBV. And it's been picking up really, really nicely. And that's also something I always thought, okay, we'd do like a creative business and Kefkak would be here. And then maybe we'd create another brand or something. I didn't realize that I'd be kind of shaped into the activism space. But something that happened when the TED Talk happened last year is that I felt a little bit guilty that I wasn't advocating for women's rights. And I was going there to tell my own story. And I felt an overwhelming sense of the time is coming and you're being prepared for that time. And when it is time to speak about these things, you'll know and there'll be a space for it. And now happens to be that time, and it's scary. It's exciting. It's an honor. It's something that is a lot to carry because you're using your voice to speak about something that affects so many people. But I'm just hoping that the courage to kind of step out and say, here is a solution to the problem. We're giving you the solution in a really beautifully packaged present.
Makes sense.
Just make it happen. So, I'm going to drop a little watch this space here, because I think that Checkmate is going to change a lot of people's lives. And it's very interesting that, the activist kind of thing happened this year.
Yeah.
Unexpected.
I think Checkmate is going to revolutionize dating. I really do. And I'm sorry that you had to go through that last year. I really am. And I'm so grateful to the solution that has come because of that experience. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, how does that not already exist?
Right.
I'm sitting here questioning that, hold on, dating sites actually just require your name and your photo.
Exactly.
You could be anyone.
Yeah.
And I mean, even in the recent news, we've seen how that has played out. And so thank you. Thank you for the courage to tap into something that could have been really traumatic and turning that into a solution so that no one else has to experience that. I really applaud you for that. And so my question to you would be, to those who are sitting back watching this thinking it's not their responsibility, because we have a lot of apathy in South Africa where if it doesn't affect me, it's not my responsibility and therefore someone else will talk about it. And not everyone wants to be an activist because, hey, it's not my problem, it's not my issue. What would you say to them, those who don't think it's their responsibility, whether it's with GBV, whether it's with poverty, violence, whatever the country is riddled with? What would you say to them?
Well, I think every problem indirectly affects you. In some sort of way, it will trickle its way to you. And if we're not standing for something, like, what is the point? So something that it's also something that I'm thinking about a lot lately is that, are you willing to sacrifice your seat at the table to advocate for the voices that aren't able to sit with you?
Oof.
And if you are advocating for the voices that aren't able to sit with you by sacrificing your seat, are you then pulling on the community with those voices included to build your own table outside the room? We don't have to be in a prescribed space to make the change. It can happen where we're at. Like, you don't have to stretch yourself too much. It's really just, again, leading with that empathy, kindness, and compassion to say, this is something that's wrong. And even if it doesn't affect me, it's my responsibility as a community member to make sure that I'm advocating for the change or noticing that somebody's left out of the conversation. And if we all start doing that in a really, really small way, it really just adds up. So really just finding ourselves in spaces where we're able to, with kindness, ask those difficult questions of people who are different to us, which is something that Kefkak does, is disarms people by making them laugh. And then all of a sudden, we're having this open conversation about, this is what this means to me. What does it mean to you? This is something that I believe to be true about this culture. What do you think? What is your opinion? And I think that that's the way that South Africa is going to move forward into beautiful, positive change, is just by disarming ourselves, building a table together and making sure we can have those conversations together without any pretenses. Like, let's just be human beings and have those conversations.
Yeah. Courtney, I'm sitting here with chills because every single time you speak, there's so much purpose and passion in every word that comes out of your mouth. I'm sitting here and I'm asking myself, what am I doing with my seat at the table? Am I willing to sacrifice that seat? Disarming people with laughter is such an incredible, incredible weapon that Kefkak is using. And yeah, no shame. Courtney, I could talk to you for hours, girl. But I've got one last question to you. Courtney, who is a brand builder, who is an entrepreneur, I want to say award-winning, if not, let's get that sorted, entrepreneur, who is an activist, who is a thought leader. You're looking back at 10-year-old Courtney, who has no idea this is about to play out the way it has. What are your words to her?
Shall we? It's funny you bring that up because so often I have so much grace for other people, but not for myself. And I don't know if that's like a female problem, but it's like, no, I can't take up too much space and I have to pull myself towards myself and get the stuff done. And I can't, be difficult when I want something done a certain way. And then often I have to really just stop and imagine if I was talking to the younger version of myself, would I treat her that way? And it's absolutely no. Mm. So I just think looking at her is that telling her she's worth taking up space, and that space that she's taking up is going to help so many people take up space of their own as well. Just really having grace for our inner child. It's not just looking back at 10-year-old me. It's knowing that like she literally lives inside of me all the time, and I have to have grace for her as I'm going.
Sure. Guys, that was Courtney. Thank you so much for joining us in this space. Recognize that your inner child is there and she deserves, or he deserves, grace. Be kinder to yourselves, young people. I think we're all striving for excellence. We're all trying to be the best that we can be. And sometimes we forget to be kind to ourselves. So thank you so much for this conversation. It's been amazing having you here. I've learned golden nuggets and I can't wait to go out and tell everyone that I know you and we're actually friends. And for everyone who's watching, that was another amazing episode of the Youth Excellence Podcast. And I think what you start to recognize with this podcast is South Africa has a bright future. If you didn't know, now you do. South Africa has a bright future and the voices might not be that loud, but this podcast gives us an opportunity to focus on those who are doing incredible things. And there's a lot more of us. And so we're going to have a lot more people here and a lot more voices. And if there's a young, excellent person that you know that you would like to be on this podcast, let us know so that we can send an invitation to them. But thank you so much for being with us and for listening to this conversation. And we look forward to seeing you at the next edition of the Youth Excellence Podcast. Danko means thank you.